John, thanks for doing this. First off, how are you?
Little tired. Just got back from the owners' meetings,
Yeah.
which followed the GM meetings, which precede the winter meetings. So it's not exactly, covering a double play or a sacrifice fly or a ground rule double. But man, is it newsy.
I was going to say, I'll see you in Nashville in a couple of weeks. And I want to start off by leaning on the bigger picture perspective here and all your years of experience covering Bay Area baseball, both teams, but specifically what you've seen unfold with the Oakland A's and the sequence of events and developments that have brought us to this point where relocation has been approved by Major League Baseball. If you rewind a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, could you ever have predicted where we're at right now?
No, I thought owners would use a little bit more common sense, and I'm talking about owners across baseball. I thought they would come to their senses and realize this is just silly. You can make it work in the Bay Area if you had an ownership group that was right by the fans so that the fans could be right by the ownership group. And they said, we tried. And yeah, you tried in Fremont, you tried in San Jose, you tried here and there. But in terms of Oakland, not necessarily as long as maybe they should have. They had deadlines that probably could have been pushed back, that January 15th.
Right.
For the revenue sharing to kick in. I mean, these are Major League Baseball owners.
Right.
They can do whatever they want. And we saw it last week at the owners' meetings. The Giants voted against the Yankees. It was 30-0, if only because they protect their own. It's not because they did it for the good of the game or the good of the Bay Area or the good of the industry or the good of the fans. They did it because they protect their own, because one day they might be in a quandary and would need John Fisher's vote or anybody else's, and you don't want to be that one in a 29-1 vote. And that's what we have. It's kind of a monopoly. The relocation committee was all owners. The executive council was all owners. The commissioner works for the owners.
Right.
So it's not like Tony Clark of the union, the players union, has a say, or the players have a say, or the Bay Area has a say, or Oakland has a say, or the fans have a say. So that's what we're dealing with.
You mentioned the word trying, which is something that the A's have mentioned. John Fisher said, Rob Manfred said, we tried. And I think it's that definition of trying. What exactly, do they define as trying to stay in Oakland? I mean, heck, they own 50% of the Coliseum land. You could try pretty easily and land a new home at the Coliseum site. So I think that word trying is the one that stuck out to me, in that it's being used a lot, but we're all operating on a totally different definition of what does trying mean here.
Right. Well, if you really wanted to build in Oakland, I think it could have been done, obviously. And I was never a fan of Howard Terminal, and I got criticized by A's fans because of that. I always thought the Coliseum was okay. You don't have to compete with the Giants over everything. They never have. They've always been the second city, and they've been successful in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But they could have turned that into, well, because it's close to BART and the airport and the freeways, and it's a huge parking lot, and the development could have helped with the construction of the ballpark. I mean, when they say, yeah, we're trying at Howard Terminal, but it's a 1,000,000 to 1 shot that it would have gotten done, I think. But I believe, and I've heard more than one person tell me that, maybe the A's ownership got a little cold feet at the end, thinking, hey, this might pass.
Right.
And if this passes, we're kind of stuck here. I don't have all this money to build. And yeah, we're going to get a lot of people to construct and, invest and all of that. But it's going to be on me, as opposed to just a little ballpark on the Strip next to a casino. And they're giving me $380 million.
And free land.
And he told me over the weekend, John Fisher did, there's 50,000 hotel rooms right nearby. So that's what they're looking at, because the fan base, or maybe not the fan base, but the people are already there because they're filling up these hotel rooms. And in a slow moment, they might just walk over to see an A's game. That's what they're hoping. But I think a lot of those tickets and suites are going to be sold to the casinos, right?
You'd have to think they'll be part of it. I look at your time in Texas last week, and I thought with the vote, no matter how it shook out, Yes, no, how many yes, how many no's? Obviously, it's a unanimous yes. I thought that the vote would reveal some answers after the fact. Okay, here's the result of the vote, and then here's everything else that we came up with. Here's how the private financing is going to work. Here's the brand new renderings that we've been sitting on for a while. Here's our temporary home plans for 2025, 6, and 7. But literally, none of that came out before or after the fact of a vote. We have none of those details that we thought would come out at the same time. So is it the case that the A's in Major League Baseball, they do have some answers, they do have some leads on those things, and they're just holding it back? Or could it simply be that even they don't know the answers to those questions yet?
Well, I was told by a couple of owners that there was maybe a loose or specific, somewhere in between, funding plan for the stadium presented to the teams.
Okay.
And that also the renderings are supposed to arrive or be made public in December, which is next month.
Right.
But in terms of the interim, they just have no idea. From everyone I spoke with, they just don't know how this is going to work. They can guess. The commissioner doesn't know. I asked the commissioner after that press conference, because I walked out with him because he didn't see enough of me in the press conference.
They cut it off early, didn't they?
Yeah, I had my hand up for some follow-ups,
right?
And they said that's it. So I walked with the commissioner outside. He was, pleasant enough to answer some more questions in a one-on-one as we walked away. And I asked him, what about the interim years? What exactly, how's this going to happen?
Right.
I tried to go back to that. And he said, well, it's really up to John Fisher. And then I later went up and spoke with John Fisher about it. And he said, well, we're working with the commissioner in Major League Baseball. And I said, this is really confusing because nobody really knows what's going to happen. They need that $60 million a year in the RSN, the cable payoff. But they have to
my
stay.
Bosses, yeah, I get it.
Your bosses are going to pay them $60 million a year to stay. Now, if they go to Vegas, that goes away. They get gambling money once they get there. The tax issue is a little bit different. All kinds of people they hope would be throwing money at them. But in the Bay Area, as long as they stay, whether it's the Coliseum or 30 to 40 games at Oracle Park, as we reported, or a mixture of both, even though the commissioner says he would like 81 and 1 yard, maybe that's not going to happen. But apparently you just need to play more than half your schedule in the Bay Area, and you can go off to Summerlin, which would be ridiculous. Their AAA team in 120 degree on getaway day.
Right.
Yeah, Aaron Judge and the Yankees really want that.
Well, imagine being a player on the A's and then having to require 2 homes for your family during the season for home games, right? It's unfathomable. So at the owners' meetings, we saw the press conference, and that's basically all we saw, and some social media here and there. What was it like to be there? And maybe what was the tone or the body language that maybe all of us missed by not being there that you observed? Or what did you see that we didn't see that we need to know about?
Well, it was a build-up because I arrived Monday for meetings that began Tuesday, continued Wednesday, and then concluded Thursday with that press conference. And they dealt with a lot of other things there.
Yeah.
The cable issues around the country and talking about different rules, et cetera. But the big issue, and the reason I was there and the reason a lot of media were there, actually, there weren't that many media compared with the GM meetings and especially the winter meetings. But from the Bay Area, I had to be there. So, I wrote stories every day. I ran into CC Sabathia, who works for the commissioner. I said, this would be a great quote. So I chased him down in the hallways, and I gave him 3 or 4 chances to say, do you feel for the fans? Is it sad for the fans? And each time he kind of took a pass.
Yeah.
And said, that's my home, but they need a stadium. So he works for the commissioner. Okay. I'll give him that. He's not independent. So there's only so much he could have said.
Right.
And I spoke with some owners. I went up to Stan Kasten of the Dodgers because in 1992, when the Giants were this close to moving to Florida, I called Peter O'Malley and spoke with him for about a half an hour over the phone for a big interview. And what he told me in 1992, on the eve of them leaving town, is this can't happen. We can't do this. The Giants got to stay. It's the O'Malley family, his dad, who really brought both teams west in '58.
That's right.
So Peter O'Malley did not want to see the Giants move to Florida, and the A's capture all of Northern California, the entire market. So from there, Bill White, the National League owner, got the National League owners together. They rejected Bob Lurie's attempt to sell to Florida, opening the door for Peter McGowan and them to buy the Giants, which supposedly inherited the territorial rights. We know that whole backstory. But right. So I asked Stan Kasten, thinking, okay, all these years later, let me use the same strategy to ask him if he thinks it's a good idea for the Giants to own all the territory in Northern California, basically, when there are 3 teams in Southern California. That's a lot of competition for the Dodgers. Plus, more baseball fans in Vegas are Dodger fans than anything else right now. So an A's move to Las Vegas would kind of be strike 1 and strike 2 for the Dodgers, right?
You'd think.
Well, Stan Kasten said, you better talk to Mark Walter, who's the primary owner, because I don't want to talk about it, and he's not going to talk about it. So the next day I go up to Mark Walter, and he did want to talk about it. I was flanked. Bob Nightingale was with me, and Bill Shaken of the LA Times. Mm-hmm. So we spoke with him, and I asked him these same questions. I said, hey, man, I spoke to O'Malley about this, your predecessor, many years ago, and this is what he said. What do you got to say? And he said, I hope the Giants make a lot of money. And so he couldn't care less. It doesn't bother him one bit that the Giants are getting all in Northern California, that the A's are moving out. And it's more money for everybody. All these other owners are going to capitalize because this opens the door even further to all the gambling money, the gaming money. So it was kind of odd going from owner to owner. But you asked specifically about the press conference, and I thought I was attending a funeral, Brody. I mean, I did not look forward to this assignment. The GM meetings look toward the future. The winter meetings look toward the future.
Right.
This thing is all about the past.
Right.
And how the past is just going away. And there wasn't a thing anybody could do about it, including our 3 friends, the A's fans.
Right.
Jorge,
Jared.
Jared and Gabriel.
Gabriel, yep.
And Jorge Leon. So they were wonderful there. They were noticed. They were heard. And they wore their Stay T-shirts, and they actually scared some owners away.
Yeah,
some owners were coming over to talk to us in the lobby in the bar area. They saw these guys and made a U-turn. The next day after they were gone, they came over and talked.
Interesting.
So I told them, I said, "Man, you made an impact. I mean, it was 30-0.
They noticed. They knew you were there at least. Yeah,
definitely.
I want to go back to the Giants thing, because during the press conference with Rob Manfred, you asked him an initial question and then a follow-up, and it wasn't really clear, and I know you were trying to get to the bottom of it, about the Oakland territory and the Giants territory. So what was your question? What was his answer? And then what did you take away from that sequence and that interaction?
Yeah, I just said, what happens to the territory now?
Yeah.
Because we all know about territorial rights in San Jose, and
right.
Lou Wolf's attempt, and Steve Schott tried to go to Santa Clara. They were all denied because of this so-called territorial rights. And one of my favorite stories in the past year is I got the minutes to the 1990 meeting.
I saw that.
The owners' meeting, in which they spoke about these territorial rights, and was supposed to be contingent on a ballpark being placed in the Santa Clara County, which never happened.
Yep.
So that was supposed to go away according to the minutes, the wording, the language in this owners' meeting from 1990. But so unlike LA, New York, Chicago, which those 2 team markets share the territory.
Right.
The Mets market is the Yankees territory. The Cubs territory is the White Sox territory. The Angels and Dodgers, they share the territory. Only in the Bay Area are they divided by counties. And the Giants own most of those counties. I mean, if you look at the map, say, wow, okay, right. Contra Costa is one of them. And that's kind of it for the A's. So Manfred said, in the first time I said, the Giants' territory is the same. And then I asked again, and he said, the A's territory is open. So it's almost like, okay, open meaning
right. That's the big takeaway.
Expansion?
What does that mean? I'm not
sure. So I
asked
him
sure.
about expansion.
Yeah.
And he said, well, we haven't even decided if we're going to have expansion.
Right.
And we don't know.
Yes, they are. He's already said they're going to.
Rob Manfred's been saying for years that once
Right.
the A's and Rays stadium issues have been resolved,
Two more
we're going to
teams.
go to 31 and 32, whether
Yep.
that's Nashville and Salt Lake, because he did say recently it's got to be West Coast, East Coast, but that West Coast could also be mountain.
Right.
So is it Salt Lake and Nashville? Is it Nashville and the Bay Area? Well, that's what we're going to be writing about quite a bit.
Interesting. I want to do this other deep dive on the Giants possibly hosting the A's for those 3 interim seasons if Las Vegas is a go and if Oakland turns away the A's for new lease. And there's some intention by the A's and some obvious reasons they would want to stay in the market. We've discussed that already. But from the Giants' perspective, I mean, the first thing about it is that no matter the ways it could be lucrative, 3 years of inviting a roommate into your house and into your room, that 3 years is a long time. This is not 3 weeks, not 3 months. This is 3 full baseball seasons.
It's pretty ugly, but like we said, for the A's to qualify for the RSN, for the Regional Sports Network money, they have to be in the Bay Area most of their home games. So it was presented to the Giants. The Giants didn't volunteer for this. 30 to 40 games, and Giants Enterprises is the side company the Giants oversee that schedules all these events at Oracle Park when the Giants are out of town,
right, or
in the off season. I mean, the Grateful Dead were in 2 or 3 consecutive nights
during the season,
$2-3 million a night just with that.
Right.
And they're not going to make that if the A's are playing. So, this isn't 2 seasons. This is 2025,
right?
And they already are looking ahead to that. Now,
absolutely.
It was. I mean, there's issues everywhere. There's issues with the Coliseum. That would make the most sense. Not that the fans are going to be crazy about it. Not that the mayor is going to be crazy about it. Summerlin makes no sense. I mean, it was suggested to me, well, maybe they play April and May before it gets too hot, and then they switch to Oracle Park.
Yeah.
But it's all kind of lunacy,
right.
And for the Giants to make it work, it's almost like the commissioner and the other baseball owners said, please do this for us, for the A's, because in 3 years they'll be gone. You won't have to worry about them anymore. You'll dominate Northern California, whatever.
So you think it's less of the Giants' even interest? It's more of them being asked as a favor to even consider this, right?
Right, because there are going to be some issues.
Right.
You know how much more expensive those Giant tickets are than A's tickets, even though John Fisher spiked A's tickets? It's a lot.
And so
it's a lot more expensive.
Explain that part, though. Why? Because you wrote an article this past summer about it, which was tremendous. It opened a lot of eyes to the potential of sharing and why there's some actual difficulties most people don't even think about. So go down that road a little bit.
Well, first of all, tickets. You would think that, the A's are there, I can get some $10 tickets.
Right.
Well, the Giants don't want that.
Right.
Because if the A's are $10 and the Giants are $100,
right.
And the casual fan or the tourist, he's going to wait for the A's to come to town so I can get in much more, reasonably priced.
Right.
And so it's almost like the A's tickets are going to be competitive with the Giant tickets. They're going to have to be $100, $200. Are A's fans going to pay that? I mean, a lot of them don't pay for $20 to go to the Coliseum, but a lot of them just protest and don't go at all.
Right.
Another issue is where are the A's going to suit up? Where's their clubhouse? The Giants don't want to give up their clubhouse every 2 weeks for a team and just scatter everything and bring stuff back.
That's not going to happen.
So you have the visiting clubhouse. That could either be the A's clubhouse or the visiting team's clubhouse. And another clubhouse would have to be built, say, beyond the left field wall, some kind of temporary home where these people can dress and retreat to, after BP and after games. It's a big mess, but that's the A's. That's what we're used to. Everything's messy.
So there's percentages. There's also like shares of concession and tickets and parking, and so it just seems like the numbers would really have to work out for the Giants to actually even consider this, though, right? I mean, it's just there's logistics, there's numbers, there's on a multitude of levels. It just seems complicated, and that's probably the biggest reason why they wouldn't want to get into this. It's just not worth it, right?
It's not worth it to them financially either. It's kind of a headache. The A's paid $1.5 million in rent at the Coliseum. That was their lease, a year, 1.5.
It's amazing.
Well, if they go back to the Coliseum, it's going to be a lot more than 1.5, and the Giants
Right.
would charge a lot more than 1.5. I mean, the mayor in Oakland's talking about keeping the name, securing an expansion team.
Right.
Those are non-starters because MLB will not guarantee anybody an expansion team right now. And Fisher is already on record saying, "I want the A's name
Yeah.
in Las Vegas."
Speaking of Mayor Shea in Oakland, she used the word hostage when describing her concerns about what the A's are going to do with their 50% of the land. They bought Alameda County's half of the Coliseum site, 150 acres on the current site, 120, 150, doesn't matter, a lot of acres. The LA Times and Bill Shaken covered this in an article, just basically documenting the mayor's concern about the A's dragging their feet on what Oakland wants to push forward and do with this site once and if the A's ultimately leave. What do you see in the future of the Coliseum if the A's aren't around?
Unfortunately, the county or the city doesn't have the power to say, "Yeah, you can leave, you can get out of your lease," although the lease is going to end anyway. They have no power to say sell it back. Why the county gave it up to the A's, I'll never know, but I think there was some shenanigans in there. Maybe the A's convinced the county/city that, hey, this is plan B. We could build here if Howard Terminal falls apart. But in reality, John Fisher just didn't like the Oakland Coliseum for whatever reason. You can speculate all you want.
Well, you saw the letter in March of 2018.
Yes.
Dave Cavell wrote to Libby Schaaf, the mayor, who said that this is our one way to secure a home that's privately financed in Oakland, and that's the Coliseum site. And then to your point, John Fisher at the owners' meeting said, well, we were just looking at it as a way to invest in Oakland. That's why we bought it.
Yeah. What do you think? I have no idea. I mean, that's messy than a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that happens in a long-term relationship. It's almost like if you were to split up with a partner that you've lived with for 50 years, who owns this? We bought it together. I'm going to take this with me. You're going to leave this here. I also don't like the way that maybe Alameda County, at their place in that time, they were trying to get out of sports. They didn't want to deal with the A's. They didn't want to deal with the Coliseum site anymore. They just wanted to get away. So they also sold that site for $85 million, which the A's are still paying off. And by the way, they owe $45 million, I believe, within the next 6 months if they do leave. But they sold it at a way below market price. So that's also part of the equation. There's no going back on it, but they also sold it off for way cheaper than they ever had to. So that's in a perfect world, this is my first question to Rob Manfred. Would you extend an olive branch? Yeah.
To the mayor,
right?
Because I wrote a story in September, a big war of words between Manfred and the mayor's office.
But he said he had no problem with her, is what he said. Which
I have no problem with the mayor. I have no problem with Oakland.
Right.
And I'm thinking this is breaking news.
Right.
This is something. But I mean, just okay. Now that we have a deal, it's like the $380 million in Nevada. I mean, it was agreed to on like phony grounds. Here are some renderings we just put together a half hour ago. We just cut and paste the Coliseum floor, and what do you think? You know, my third grade, class put this together yesterday. And not to disparage the third grade class, they would have done a lot better than those renderings.
You should have said artificial intelligence. AI did it for you, because I made some renderings just out of nowhere on AI, and they look pretty good. I want to go to that flip tax. Bob Nightingale was, as far as I know, the one who kind of uncovered this, the flip tax that baseball owners are imposing on the A's. And to just describe it for anybody watching, essentially, John Fisher cannot sell the A's before moving to Las Vegas or during the process unless he pays a 20% tax on the sale price. And then it goes down to 10%, and then it kind of goes eventually down to nothing. But it's a 10-year flip tax. Until 2034, he'll always be penalized if he somehow wants or needs to get out of owning the A's. So my question is, if the votes were unanimous among Major League Baseball owners, why did they put that in there? And then why did they not say anything about it? Why did it have to get leaked to the press like it did with Bob Nightingale?
I thought your next question is, did you order the code red? I mean...
That too.
Maybe there was enough doubt because, what has this team really accomplished in their stay in Oakland moving forward? I think that if they didn't do anything, he could have been free to, once he got there, change his mind.
Right.
Like we've seen. He had a different property in Las Vegas, changed his mind. Now this property.
Right.
He liked Oakland, changed his mind. Let's go to Las Vegas.
Right.
So I heard from many people that John Fisher genuinely wants to keep the team long term, that he does not want to sell. In fact, I asked him point blank 2 hours after the vote, did you ever consider selling the team? I asked him in the past tense. He said, well, no. My main thing was that it was a big problem, and I didn't think the problem was going to be resolved if I sold the team. I mean, Joe Lacob fans everywhere might be cringing.
Yeah.
But that's the and you know what? At the owners' meetings, it just seems all the owners I spoke with, all the MLB officials, everybody connected with this whole relocation process. There were talking points that they stuck by. Can't play in that facility. Well, that's not the point. Everyone knows they can't play in that facility.
Right.
That's why, A's fans are pushing for the Coliseum site or Howard Terminal. But it was just amazing that everybody either bought in or said they bought in to this relocation, 30-0. I mean, it was really unbelievable. I was thinking, well, maybe someone would take a stand.
Yeah.
I predicted 30-0 or 29-1, maybe Jerry Reinsdorf, who didn't vote for Rob Manfred. Maybe the Dodgers, or no, maybe Artie Moreno.
I thought Hal Steinbrenner would he was against teams not spending with the luxury tax like the A's don't. I agree with you.
Yeah, in fact, Jorge went up to Hal the other day in Arlington and thanked him for the comments he made.
Right.
And the comments were basically, hey, we're giving you revenue sharing, spend the money.
Right.
You ain't spending it on payroll. You're not spending it on anything. I did a story. I think one of my last stories before the vote was analytics. The A's ranked last in full-time analytics people in Major League Baseball with 8 in 2023. You guys invented this. Billy Beane and Sandy and DePodesta and Forrest, you guys invented this. Now you rank last. So I went, it's funny, in my reporting, it kind of went up the totem pole to ownership that I was writing this. And poof, they found more money for more analytics people. So there are going to be 3 more guys in 2024, so they're up to 11, which is still tied for last with the Marlins and the Rockies.
Wait, you're telling me that Moneyball was real? I thought that was just a movie. I didn't know Brad Pitt was playing somebody. Wait, Brad Pitt is Billy Beane? What a compliment.
I mean, there were a lot of people, on the staff upset that Tampa Bay leads the majors with 44 full-time analytic people. 44.
Look at their success, though. I mean, they've kind of led the league in surprising a lot of people.
So if you don't spend in payroll, spend in analytics people who might outthink the competition and look for an advantage. But the A's didn't have the manpower to do that.
How do the A's even go after free agents right now in a multi-year fashion, because they don't even know their home in 2025 or 2026? And when David Force goes out and talks to player agents, how much money can he promise them? This is a team that all of a sudden has to pay for a ballpark or start thinking about paying for a ballpark in construction. They also probably have to pay off the Coliseum site, that $45 million in the next 6 months, which is like a full year of a player payroll salary or team payroll salary. And they've also got to figure out how to start spending more to even get close to the league average of which they said they would. There's a lot of money to be spent here, but I don't know that there's answers even for the A's to go out and move forward. So from a baseball perspective and following through on that promise, I don't even see how that's possible right now because there's no answers.
And they did sign a couple of guys to 2-year contracts at the beginning of last season.
Right. That gets him through the Oakland years. I'm saying for the interim years, who knows how that even works.
Right. I asked David Force at the GM meetings exactly about that. I said, what's the payroll going to be? He said, well, we haven't set the payroll or the budget. And I said, well, I thought you did set the budget because I found out that you had more full-time analytics people. He said, well, that's a different budget. This is the player budget. I said, okay.
Which is probably true. I believe David for his word, but
of course,
he probably doesn't have the information.
Baseball
is
ops
the point.
people with the A's have been as good in the last 20 years as any organization.
Yes.
With 11 playoff appearances, ranking 5th in the majors in the 2000s.
Yep.
Is pretty significant. So yeah, I trust what he says. You know, all he wants is a stadium. That guy. You know, I mean, he would love to be able to be like other general managers and pursue these guys. But I asked him about the budget. He said, "We'll be able to spend." I said, "What does that mean? Spend more?" He said, "We'll be able to spend." I said, "Like a lot?" I said, "We'll be able to spend." He came back to that phrase, but I mean, he said he said he's trying to look at free agents as we speak, but he didn't have those conversations yet with anybody because free agent market just opened at the time about a 2-year deal, which would take you through, the Twilight Zone years.
Right. So, I mean, look, between the two of us, like we've been around the block in life a few times, right? And we know that in just life in general for us, there are some years that are more costly, a health issue, a house issue, a car issue. I know your daughter's in college right now. That's an expense. But like, so some years you're like, wow, this is going to test us financially. Like, I truly think the A's are going to get so tested financially here because those multiple angles I just talked about, the ballpark, the expanded payroll, and paying off the Coliseum site, they've never been in this spot before. And it's a lot for any team to take on, let alone one that has always been on the lesser side of spending.
And if you look at history, who spent the least in free agency in Major League Baseball for the last 16 years?
Yeah.
I mean, Steve Schott still gave $66 million over 6 years to Eric Chavez in 2004. Still the biggest Oakland A's contract in history. Well, nothing's come close.
In fairness, though, the agent on that deal was really, really good. Do you know who the agent was?
That agent should be working with John Fisher to get a ballpark in Oakland.
Dave Stewart.
To get a ballpark in Nashville.
I give him so much grief and say, you're the guy that's got the biggest A's player contract worked out. And so what's crazy, and to your point, the A's as a franchise have never handed out a $100 million player contract. They've also, as a team in any single season, they're the only team to also have this, never had a $100 million team season payroll, which is unbelievable that they're the only ones.
Yeah. Can you imagine if Dave Stewart were hired 3 years ago by Dave Kaval and John Fisher to get a ballpark in Oakland? There's nobody better in the world who could have helped. Dave Stewart told me that he went up to John Fisher twice and asked him if he could buy into A's ownership. Fisher twice told him no. What does that mean? These owners say, we're all about diversity. We want diversity. At this owners' meetings, I saw no diversity. I saw a lot of people who looked alike.
Yeah.
And Reggie Jackson said something similar.
Yeah.
He approached John Fisher. Can I buy into your team? No. So why is that?
Literally ripping a team away and a franchise away from probably baseball's most diverse market, at least one of them, right?
Yeah, I wrote a story about this. While all this talk and all these arrangements are, the RBI program, and we're trying to bring African Americans into the game more. We're trying to go international. Blah blah blah. But a couple of polls suggest that Oakland is the most diverse city in the country, and so you're pulling out, amid all this talk about diversity, the team that plays in the most diverse city in the country,
right?
Going to Las Vegas. So, it's almost like you can't keep talking about diversity if you don't really mean it.
Yeah. I got two more things for you. I appreciate your time. I honestly didn't even plan to go this long, but it's been so good, and your expertise on this, and you've covered this from every angle at this point. But you've talked to so many people along the way, current players, former players, people in and around the game, media types, fan types, owners, management types. Have you found anybody outside of A's ownership or somebody who's not an A's employee who said, you know what, I actually think this A's to Las Vegas thing is really good for the game and the fans, and I think it's a slam dunk in terms of working? Have you found anybody who even tried to go down that opinion with you?
Jason Giambi.
Okay.
I, I,
So how did he justify it though? Like, so I'm curious. I mean, you
'cause he
did
lives
find
there.
somebody. Okay.
He lives there.
Oh, well, there's a rooting interest. He might have a new
Exactly.
job, maybe. Jose
And
Canseco, I'm
he's
sure
got
said the
kids.
same thing, right?
And he coaches a travel ball team. I went to Vegas in March when the A's played the Reds in the 2-game
Right.
exhibition series to talk with casino owners and politicians and fans. And basically the casino owners and politicians told me, we get stuff done here. And so they're coming. I mean, I said, oh, okay. It's a little different than California. They don't need specific rules to get stuff done. They just get stuff done.
We take the bait down here in Las Vegas.
Yeah, right. Well, whatever you want, we got. We'll take care of it. And so day one, Jason Giambi was on the field with like 10 kids, his baseball team. They're all like 10, 9 years old, including his own son. And he was talking it up like, of all people, Jason, come on, man. This is your team. You grew up. You apparently were offered a lot of money to stay. Maybe, they were talking about the first $100 million contract, which if he took it, they would have no money to. Well, they wouldn't have spent any more money on anyone else.
That's right.
That's when he went to the Yankees. And anyway, yeah, Jason Giambi. But no, I all the people at the owners' meetings. They could. It's not like we're excited to go to the Las Vegas. It's like, we're just tired of it.
Right.
We're tired of the whole thing.
It's easier
All
just to
these
say
owners-
yes. It's easier to say yes than to actually say no and give a reason why. Just get it over with. I don't want to hear about it anymore. Kind of seems
They've
like
been telling
that's how
the
they voted.
commissioner, and going back to Bud Selig,
Yeah.
it was March of 2009 when he formed that 3-man blue ribbon committee to study the A's situation in the Bay Area ballparks. And it's been about 280 months later, they finally got it resolved. But it's there. Yeah, I different owners have told me that we're just tired of this.
Yeah.
We've been asking Manfred to get this done, so we put the pressure on him. And so basically, there's a deal in Las Vegas. There's not a deal in Oakland right now, even though they might have been very close to a deal,
Right.
according to the mayor and her staff, which A's ownership would say, well, there was a possible referendum. There were possible, different hurdles that they had to pass. It's easy to say that now,
Sure.
but in real time, it seemed like, when you listen to the mayor, maybe that next week or 2 weeks could have made a big impact in negotiations. But John Fisher walked away in June, and
Right.
the rest is history.
They had the summit all scheduled. They had even the A's preferred mediator to be part of that summit, which obviously never happened. Just the last thing I wanted to get to is sometimes the projections of what is about to happen blow my mind. And this would be, I think, for A's fans, a lot easier to digest if the plans were laid out, all of it made sense. It was so logical that what could your opposition be? Well, it's going to work out better. This is just business, and that business is almost guaranteed. But when we talk about a 9-acre site for a retractable roof and 30,000 seats, all of those things have never been done on that size and that space in baseball before. Talk about the way this move's going to happen, the interim seasons. There's a lot of things that don't mathematically add up, including the expected and projected 30 straight years of sellouts at that stadium. And you've watched so much baseball over the years, like that. You laugh at that. I laugh at that too. Yeah. But that is something that a marketing person who we could name names, but a marketing person in Las Vegas came up with that. Lawmakers bought into it. People believe it, and they're going to fund $380 million for it. And I think that's the hardest thing. And I'm just wondering if you agree. I know this is kind of a long setup, but all the crazy stuff that just, if it made sense, we might be okay with it. But it's the fact that it doesn't make sense. It's the exact opposite of that. And that's what we're supposed to digest.
I think everything we heard in those hearings, it should just go away, because so much of it was nonsense.
Yeah.
They could say all they want, but the fact is they got a baseball team and it's a lot cheaper than waiting for expansion.
Right.
Because that would have been, in today's dollars, $2.2 billion just to get a team, another $1 or $2 billion to build a ballpark.
Right.
Here, all they're spending is $380 million, and this guy's going to come in, and a team is ready to go.
Right.
So they're investing stupid money now, so they don't have to invest a lot more stupid money later. And who knows? Maybe Vegas would not have been chosen to be an expansion team.
Yeah.
So they got theirs. Any way you slice it and dice it, they got theirs. And it's a damn shame because, and Brody, we cover teams that were not originally here. I mean, on one hand, we look, now we know what it feels like in Philadelphia when they lost a team to Kansas City. And I mean, Kansas City, probably they weren't broken because they got
the Royals, right, which is part of it. Yeah.
And the Giants, I spoke to a lot of people who are still ticked off that the Giants left in '58 from New York. And, even the Warriors were from Philly. And I mean, there's not many teams here that were actually born here.
They migrated
west, but they took off.
Migrating west, though, I understand at that point of history and travel became a thing. I get migrating west. We're now going back east, and really we're going south, so totally understand.
And it's I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way, but next season at the Coliseum, I mean, these fans are already saying you ain't seen nothing yet. I mean, how could you play there? And how could you even want a lease extension? Well, the $60 million supersedes any ill will with the fans. I mean, we already know that Major League Baseball doesn't necessarily care about A's fans because they would have maybe bent over backwards to do a little deeper dive into making it work somehow. Right. I mean, I think it's still a two-team market. There was a time, I mean, you can go back to the Haas family, but you could also go to the Schott Hoffman years where they were like 5 straight years average, right around average, which give or take 2 teams north or south in attendance. Yeah. And this at a stadium, and Steve Schott and Ken Hoffman bought the team, and 10 minutes later, Al Davis announced he's coming back. So he was going to put in $50 million and have the city of Oakland match it. Right. To turn the Coliseum into like Anaheim Stadium.
Baseball only. Right.
They were both built at the same time. And once he heard about Al Davis, he said, well, I'm not going to spend $50 million. It's no longer a baseball facility. Yep. Let's move to Santa Clara or something else. And then, I mean, this goes back to Al Davis. It goes back to Jerry Brown, who couldn't care at all about baseball. I mean, it's a long, windy, awful path to get to this conclusion, and it just seemed, and you and I probably believe the same way we'll always believe, it could have worked here. Yeah, I know it could have. John, I appreciate your coverage of all this in the San Francisco Chronicle, which, by the way, will be promoted in the comments section here and in the description of the video. People are already familiar, but thank you for your coverage. Thank you for joining me here. And in some way, I just can't wait until you're writing about double plays and ERA and saves and blown saves again, because this stuff is like a headache. It goes above and beyond what we're supposed to be doing, but I appreciate you for doing it. Yeah, no, you're right. And it's the fans and it's the players. Yeah. Zach Geloff is a wonderful ball player. Yeah. And, he knows nothing about this history. His parents do. His parents know about it. True. But he's been quoted as saying stuff like, "Yeah, I look forward to going to Las Vegas." And you kind of feel for him. He said, "Well, you don't know the whole story." And yeah, I know. And it's just a bad vibe. And we're going to hear more of that because young players are coming up from AAA Las Vegas. Yep. And thinking, well, eventually they're going to go play in Las Vegas if they're going to stick around. Right. It's going to be tough on free agents, like you said. They're going to have to maybe trade for established players, or the free agents they do get are going to be players who are kind of down and out, coming off a bad year, injured last season, kind of just a one-year deal to get themselves right and go back out on the market again. Interesting setup for their Las Vegas years, maybe. John, appreciate this. Thank you so much again. Brody, thanks a lot.